All right. Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of the Digital Marketing Agency Builders podcast. Today, I'm super excited. We are talking about how to ignite your agency sales with a personal brand. So I'm very excited to have with me today, Matt Johnston. After 15 years as a viral video pioneer and theater director, building programs at New York Magazine, Business Insider, NowThis, and Men's Health, Matt left the mean streets of New York City to dive into digital entrepreneurship. He's the founder and creator of Guide Social, a video ad creative agency that served hundreds of clients across the world, including 17 Shark Tank companies. He's also the founder of Ignite Creators, an education program to help creatives build 6- and 7-figure businesses. Matt lives in Pennsylvania with his wife and 2 kids, plays far too many video games for a 40-year-old, and is a coffee-obsessed morning person who couldn't do meaningful work after 5 p.m. if he tried. Matt, I can very much relate to that last line there. Excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. I must have been drunk when I wrote that. A crazy little intro.
It was quite relatable.
On,
For sure. No, I'm happy to have you here. It was actually quite relatable. Listen, I after 5 p.m. I'm definitely more of a morning person myself. So
I noticed that my energy drops around 3 p.m. every day, Eastern time. And literally the other, about maybe 6 months ago, I was like, nope, not even going to try to work after 4. We have a studio, a physical studio. I just leave. Like at 4 p.m. every day, I leave. I go pick up my kid from daycare. I go home and don't do any work the rest of the day.
So we are talking about how to leverage a personal brand to increase agency sales. So to start, how does one actually create a personal brand and what goes into it?
Well, I mean, obviously, it's no surprise that when you're building an agency, there's such the competition is insane. So the number one thing that you need to focus on is how you're unique and what your sort of unique deliverable is. But also sort of it's more important from a marketing perspective what your unique mechanism is. And people are just always going to be drawn to people more than they're going to be drawn to companies. So building a personal brand is probably the most valuable thing that you can do. And sometimes people say that that's not a good idea because, what if I want to sell my company one day and everything? It's like, I think you need to walk before you run. When you're trying to get to 6 figures a month, I mean, up until you get to 6 figures a month, I think that you should be leaning on your personal brand to get clients. And that means that you need to get, first of all, extremely focused on who you are, what you do, and how you're unique. And ideally, a unique mechanism and perspective to the way that you approach the fulfillment that you do. That's the sort of basic 101 of it. Not even focusing on personality, like I'm going to be the crazy guy or whatever. Like I think it needs to be about what's the unique proposition and value. Because if you're out there saying, I run Facebook ads for clients and scale them from 6 figures to 7 figures, that's not attractive enough. I think that your personal brand needs to be a little bit more about the unique emotional benefit and a system that you have to get people there. And then that can drive all of the brand content and sales that you do.
Yeah, I mean, that I run Facebook ads and scale businesses. I mean, like you and everyone else, right? So you'd have to be a little bit more, you'd have to be able to stand out a little bit more for sure than that. Okay, so let's say you do find, your personal brand, I guess. What platforms should you concentrate on to promote that personal brand?
So I think, so first of all, just to drill down on what this unique mechanism is, because it's really, really important. You need to be able to basically, it's not like you have to reinvent the wheel. It's not like you have to, let's say you're a Facebook ads agency. You don't have to do Facebook ads different than you think will work or anything like that. You don't have to find a different way to do it. It's all about positioning. You need to position a different way that you do it. So let's say, so you build a system, like we all have systems. I have a billion systems. Tyler, you probably have systems. I have the hero system for viral video. I have the 4 R's for video ads that convert. I have the seed system to create headlines for, like, we all have these these unique mechanisms. And it's not that they're definitely not BS. They work, but it's about framing that. And once you have that, you sort of need that seed to be able to go out and be on all of these platforms. I mean, I think this changes all the time. To be completely honest, I don't really think that, as far as like, once you do have your focus and your mechanism and all of this like sort of straightened out from a personal brand side, I don't really think you need to focus on being omnipresent, like being everywhere, because that's extremely hard and it's not super scalable. And everybody that I have come across, including myself, that tries to do it quits it because it just feels like too much and you don't know how to do it. If I were starting from scratch today with organic stuff specifically, I would do really just YouTube, and I would repurpose as I had time for, basically. I think ultimately people focus a little bit too much on vanity metrics when they're building their personal brands. So they'll focus on views and comments and likes and subscribers. And, a lot of these people aren't making any money.
I totally get that. I feel that a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. Even with a podcast, right? Like all of these things have to does this have a monetization plan behind it that makes sense? Which doesn't mean it has to be quick necessarily, because a lot of this stuff is a long-term game, but does it have a plan that makes sense? Like we all see people online, like there's a couple of business coaches that I love on, like obviously Gary Vee does this stuff, and there's a guy named, I think, David Meltzer or whatever. He's amazing on Instagram, but in just like all these short video content all the time. And I can see how somebody would want to do that, but it's very difficult to reproduce. I think that a YouTube channel is the best place now because the algorithm is so built around intent and search that the best thing you can do is build a YouTube channel. And if you want to build a podcast too, just sort of repurpose that podcast to the YouTube channel, but have YouTube be the thing, because it's very difficult to find podcasts as well. So I think that that's sort of the best way to go right now. I wouldn't focus on a lot of the other stuff. And in general, I'm a little anti-social media these days, to be honest with you. Like I think that it gives a lot of people imposter syndrome and makes them feel like they're behind and they're not good enough. And I think the less of it you consume, the better. I think you should focus on your unique value and create, and go to the platforms where your audience most likely is going to be looking for you, which is not necessarily a newsfeed-based platform. So, for example, if you're out there saying, I got to make a TikTok, I would recommend that you look at other avenues first, because it's just very difficult to feed that and to feel comfortable with it, and people aren't necessarily looking for you there. All of these things are good to have, but they're like plan D, you know? I personally feel like, and you'll probably quit anyway. So I would focus on YouTube, or just simply running content-based ads and building your list, and then building a community.
Matt, you said a lot there. So I'm trying to
I always do.
Yeah, you said a lot there. So our first thing on the people focusing on vanity metrics and not really making any money. Yeah. One of the things that helps me avoid that hurdle was I didn't start with the personal brand first. I started with the business first and got that profitable. And then once I had more time, like I had my systems and processes down, and I brought in the people to help me manage those systems and processes, and I had more time in my day, then I leveraged that time to build on more longer term things that weren't going to necessarily show, ROI immediately, like my personal brand, right? So getting content out there, making sure that I'm doing things like this, that, gets my voice out there and involved in the space online. So I think if you're an agency owner and you're hearing this episode, one thing I would say to definitely take away from it is don't like stop your agency to go build your personal brand to then build the agency on the back of the personal brand, because in my opinion, that's the long way around. And you're going to go through a long period of time with like, you know, likes and no money. So get into revenue, focus on the core business fundamentals first, and then use a personal brand to then take your agency to that next level and continue to, you know, grow in that way. And I find that when you have a personal brand, it really helps build authority for these sales calls. So you're assuming that you'd already have sales calls going for the business, so that when people come through the pipeline, they're like, oh yeah, I seen Tyler out there, and I know his content, and I really like him, and so that helps the sales process. But I didn't do that in reverse, right? I didn't put the Tyler out there and then get the sales calls. It was backwards. So that kind of helped me. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, sales first always. Like sales first always. Yeah. The only thing that I'll say, obviously, is that listen, like running the marketing for an agency and sales is a very simple process. Generate calls and close them. And ultimately, a lot of agency owners get really stuck on that first step. Now, I'm sure that you have a lot of systems and processes in your programs and everything to generate these leads and everything like that. Some people have found, and I know I've been there too, that one big piece of getting larger clients or whatever, or dream clients or whatever, sooner is through direct selling strategies. So, and I also do think that some of the work that you put into figuring out what the personal brand is, i.e. the unique way that you serve, is going to serve you very well on sales calls when you're trying to, when you have to do objection handling. Why should I hire you and not somebody else? Ideally, you've gone through the sales process a little better than to get a question as pointed as that. But that's sort of the idea. But yeah, I mean, obviously, I 100% agree. You should do sales-focused things first. I mean, you can make a very good argument that until you get to like $50K per month, you probably shouldn't even be worrying about doing any social media. If somebody told me that was the strategy, I would say, yeah, absolutely, just generate calls. But just know that one great way to generate calls can also be by directly trying to get in touch with the decision makers, and there's some personal brandy stuff to that. Does this sort of answer your question? I mean, there's no one way to skin a cat, right? Like ultimately we all need to generate as many leads as possible that are qualified on a daily basis to be able, it's just a numbers game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have to have some type of presence online where I guess you're dipping into personal branding there before you generate those calls. But I would say just before you spend all your days focusing on creating personal branded content, like one of the things that drives me crazy is when we bring on a new agency in the program and they're so hung up on their niche, or they're so hung up on like their logo or the way this website thing looks. And I'm like, you are missing the whole forest for a specific tree. Like, and you're stuck there for weeks trying to perfect some branding type thing when that's not going to be the thing that gets you the calls, closes the deal, makes your clients happy. None of it. So I think it's amazing fire that can help move your brand, but it's just not the first thing to do in many, many cases. You mentioned earlier that you would focus on YouTube primarily. So why YouTube, and what do you do there specifically?
It's just the only place where people are searching for solutions. Every other platform is newsfeed based, and that's interruption marketing essentially. You know, I mean, I think the second place to look at is probably your personal Facebook profile when you're talking about the algorithms that are going to favor things. But I think that Facebook is it's going in a rough direction.
It is going rough, right? Yeah.
But YouTube is one of the YouTube is everything. I mean, I think in 10 years YouTube will like run the world when it comes to content, and they almost run it now. YouTube
I was gonna say, doesn't Google already run the world?
They do. And of course, YouTube is the second most visited website in the world, I believe, to google.com. And I also believe that it's the second, like technically, well, I guess this follows, but the second biggest search engine in the world to Google. I mean, if you think about it, when you're posting content on all these other platforms, including Instagram and where everybody wants to be, and TikTok, which is so hot, they're not looking for you there, so you're interrupting them, and then you're playing this super long game. YouTube is also a long game, but they're searching for your solutions, theoretically. It also gives you a better place to send people when they do want to know a little bit more about you, because it's just better brand building. Yeah, I mean, ideally, since it's a search engine, it's just the best way to go. Like one of my good friends, Kim Garst, who's like the queen of social media. Like she's even now, we talk all the time about this stuff, and she's like, honestly, Pinterest and YouTube, I think, are it now. Because they're both search focused. I don't know that I would build my agency on Pinterest, but YouTube,
yeah,
it's very, very interesting. And of course, then there's the obvious layer of that video is always going to build affinity more, because you can see people's eyes and you can feel closer to them and have that proximity without having proximity, and building that. I mean, that's what YouTube is, like that's everything. It's a video-based platform. So I would focus on that. And you asked me what to do on there. I wouldn't get too much in your head. In fact, I'm really interested in the idea of, you see all these YouTube creators on YouTube and everything, and there's like one way to build a YouTube channel, and it's like you got to get your lighting set up and your studio all good, and you've got to buy your 14 millimeter lens, so you have that YouTube aesthetic, and you need to, make sure that you have practical lighting behind you, and that you've got like the perfect boom mic setup, and you got to put $1,500 into that, and then you've got to whatever, you have to script everything and buy the right teleprompter and blah blah blah. And honestly, I think that's all garbage. Like, I think that, I mean, not that the people that do that are not creating great content, because they are, but like that's paralyzing. Not to mention, I feel like there's something about talking to the camera that almost makes you feel a little bit like, okay, what do you want from me? What I'm getting really interested in is creating content on YouTube that you could just literally like have somebody interview you and chop it up into pieces that you put on YouTube, or get arrange a small group in your community of like 5 people that you could just like speak to and give advice to about your topic, have it filmed, and then cut that up into content, because that actually feels, as long as we can see and hear you really well, that actually feels more authoritative. It's way easier to produce, like really easy. Like you could hire somebody on Upwork or Fiverr to slice those videos up to you after somebody shoots it, like on their phone if you need to. And having that stuff out there in the world, it just makes you more of an authority. It's easier to produce. You don't have to get in your head about things. I think those are some easy ways to get started on YouTube without doing the whole like creator thing.
Yeah, for sure. And another way to leverage that as an agency really is if you're already like you're targeting a niche, right? And so you want to talk about things going on in your industry, in your niche. And so if you get people that are, running businesses in that niche to talk to you, you have podcast episodes, you have YouTube videos, and you have a connection to a potential client after you film those type of things. So I think there's a ton of value there. Why?
Great strategy. Yep.
Yeah, it's huge. Why would you say a personal brand matters if you already have a successful company?
Well, that's a really good point. If you already have, so first of all, I don't know what successful company means, but if you have reached your goal, let's say you want to build a 6-figure per month agency, and you have done that without a personal brand, I don't think that you should create one if that's all that you want. If you want to build a second revenue stream selling information, like you want to build a second revenue stream building a program like you have, or building like coaching and consulting for other agency owners, or you want to branch out and be an author, you want to speak on more stages because that's what you personally in your personal life want, then you should do it. If you don't want to do anything other than build this company, have this company be big and maybe sell it or get it huge, don't even bother with a personal brand. It's not necessary.
Yeah, I think that's important to highlight, is that personal brands can be, fuel to grow your business. But if you're already in a place where you're happy with the progress of your business and you've done that without the help of a personal brand, then don't kill yourself because you think that everyone has to have a personal brand now. Like, it's one tool that can help you grow. But if you're already where you're at, like, it's a matter of, do I actually want to do this? And that actually leads me to my next question really well, because a lot of people may be camera shy. I know a ton of people that don't want to be on camera or on Zoom or in videos, or even, fame is not for everyone. Not everybody wants to have a lot of people looking at them, right? So can you build a personal brand and not be willing to constantly be in front of a camera?
Yeah, of course.
How?
It's maybe a little harder, but you can do it. And the only reason, and I don't know, harder is relative, because if you really hate being on camera, but I believe that the quickest way to, like I always say, the quickest way to a conversion is video. And obviously the quickest way, people buy from you because they know, like, and trust you. The quickest way to get to know, like, trust is video. But, I was obsessed with Seth Godin's way of looking at marketing for many years before I even saw a video that he was in, because I read his books. So obviously you can build a personal brand without it. So how would you do it in this day and age? You would probably, obviously you would create a blog and come up with and create really value-based content there and find ways to drive traffic to that and make it somewhat opinionated, like not just like how to do this, how to do that, like all of HubSpot's blogs or something like that. Like, put your opinion, like, write essentially columns, like old school newspaper like in your blogs about how to do this, how to do that from my unique perspective with my unique mechanism. So you can still do that with blogs. It's just the written word. Obviously the written word has been influencing people for thousands of years. So it still works. It's just about, people just worry about getting eyeballs on it. But the same thing can happen with video. I think that it's a great, if you are interested in having personal brand be a tool, I think it's a great strategy to just run a retargeting campaign on Facebook at like $1 a day for any content that you want to get out there in the world, reach campaigns or traffic campaigns or whatever it is, to your retargeting audience, like people that are already like interacting with you, and have your blogs come up in their feeds that are value-based, have your videos come up if you want to do video. But yeah, I think writing is the other way to do it. You can also do that through LinkedIn. Like, a lot of people do it on LinkedIn. They just write longer articles on LinkedIn. And there's more that goes into that game because you have to engage with other people on the platform. And that's a whole social selling thing that I don't get into, but, there's that as well. And of course, podcasts, right? You don't have to be on video to run a podcast, but you have to find a way to get eyeballs on that podcast. So you have to promote it, have a marketing strategy, all those things. And then, of course, there is some value, lots of value, to just like look at having a personal brand in a different way. Like, have a personal brand to the audience that you're building rather than having a personal brand to everybody in your niche. Essentially, doing a form of list building and then emailing them every day. That builds personal brand within that community, which arguably could be the highest ROI brand building that you can do, because you're directly talking to your potential customers because they've already given you a little yes. Hopefully that sort of answers your question. That's definitely a way to do it. You can't get away from creating content, though, if you want to build a personal brand. I can't think of a way to do that.
A personal brand is just a collection of content online. That's ultimately that's
pretty
all
much
personal brand
like
is.
Other than speaking. Like, if you're getting a lot of speaking gigs, you could potentially argue that's a way to build a personal brand without content. But ultimately, like, that is sort of, whatever. It's just sort of semantics, because you're ultimately going to have to use and get that content out there into the world of your speaking to be able to get people to notice it and even care. So, yeah.
That's true. I think you said something that's really, really important. And I think when people hear personal brand, they want to immediately like make their personal brand viewable by the masses, or to, like you said, like go to an entire niche or a big population of people. And their head instantly goes to those vanity metrics, like you talked about before: likes, comments, shares, views, right? I want, hundreds of thousands of views, all that, right? On a previous podcast I did, I was talking to someone about how I would much rather have very, very few views on my video if 50% of them were people actively considering buying my package, right? Or buying a marketing package that I'm offering at the time. If I have 10 views, but 5 of those people are literally in the sales process, and that video gave authority to me and my brand to go ahead and move through that process, and I made 5 sales out of those 10 views, then I'm good with 10 views, right? Instead of 100,000 views where no one really knows me, the content is okay, but I just got a bunch of views. Like, at the end of the day, views aren't dollars. And so if you're making a personal brand, I think not aiming for everyone, but aiming for people that you're already in front of and following you, or engaged with your business already. If you have the business running and then you're adding the personal brand, can be, like you said, the most effective way to use a personal brand is to further, like we said, like the whole art, like this whole podcast is called How to Ignite Your Existing Agency Sales with a Personal Brand. Instead of creating the personal brand and hoping that one of those 100,000 people says, oh, I want to buy something now. It's more about targeting your content instead of just to the masses. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I think in general, like, agency owners have a problem with focus. And they have a problem with,
oh my God, shiny objects.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I'm sure that both of us, that's happened to me a million times. Still happens all the time. But one of the best things that I'm in this like high level mastermind group, and one of the best pieces of advice that he ever gave me was, you need to focus like at least 70 to 75% of all of your energy on revenue generating activities in your business. And one of the biggest problems that agency owners have is they get really stressed out about getting leads. And so they're like, I can't get leads. How do I get leads? And then they go chase leads and have that scarcity mentality that ended up leading them to not get leads, because they're just not following the systems and processes that they need to do to get the leads. And then if they do get a client, all they do is fulfill for that client, and then they stop trying to get leads. And then it turns into, oh my gosh, I'm not making any money, guys. And I'm like, okay, well, what are you spending your time on? And so that's why you have to be very intentional with this stuff. Don't get paralyzed by it, but say, okay, so all I need to do is generate calls. That's literally your job. All I need to do is generate sales calls. Okay, how do I do that? What are the different avenues that I can do that? Okay, I have a funnel. Okay, I have a way to run traffic to that funnel. Great. Are there other ways that I can generate high quality traffic to that funnel? Like, for example, could I find a way for content to fuel that funnel? Okay. How much time will that take me? And is there a way to do that where I can drive really high quality traffic to that funnel and find a way to carve that out in my week, where I know that when I'm making this YouTube video or writing this blog, this is directly linked to money. There's a strategy behind it there. That's what you need to be spending all of your time doing. The best thing that you could do is be like, okay, from 8 a.m. to noon every single day, I'm only going to focus on the things that make me money, and I'm doing no fulfillment during that time. Focus is huge. Focus is enormous, right? And if you like mix the Pomodoro technique in with that strategy, you'll really win, because you'll be able to sort of take it into bite-sized chunks and like start crossing things off your to-do list and getting those dopamine rushes. And you'll start to see that you make a ton more money when it's all a mindset game. It really is. I mean, Tyler, you give people the systems, right? And the reason that people it's just mindset. It's like, are you focusing on the things you should be focusing on? Are you doing the work? Are you getting distracted? It sort of comes down, like, do you believe that you can do it? It's another huge thing. Like, do you really believe in yourself? Do you really believe that you can make money doing these things? That's what it comes down to, I think. Sort of a tangent there, but it's important.
No, it's okay. I actually the tangent is spot on for our audience of agency owners, and I couldn't agree more. I think, the systems and processes are there for people to use, but it takes more than a system and a process to find success and find, a growing client base. Because the biggest thing that I see, honestly, is in difference in outcomes is persistence. People, like, no matter how you slice it, you're going to have to optimize different channels, whether it's Facebook ads to an agency funnel, whether it's LinkedIn automated messages that are sending out and connecting to people, and then you're booking them in for sales calls, whether it's a VA that's cold calling people on lists for your niche to book in sales calls. No matter what you're doing for lead gen, it rarely works from day one. Rarely. You have to know that, be persistent with it, and say, okay, I expected this. I expected a little resistance, right? Let me learn, how do I optimize this to make it work better, to let the leads start coming in. But I find that today, in today's day, oh my God, I sound old now. Ugh. In today's day and age, I feel like people have very short, not only do they have short attention spans, but they have a short span of period that they're willing to keep at something before they just throw their hands up and say, it doesn't work. It didn't work, so I'm trying something else. It's like, what do you mean it doesn't work? There's thousands of people that it's working amazing for, and you couldn't get a booked call in from LinkedIn in the first week. So you just stopped doing LinkedIn altogether and say LinkedIn doesn't work? What? No, you didn't work. The persistence thing, I think is a big gap in the outcome. Really,
yeah, totally. And I'm sure you work with people on the mindset that it takes to do that, because a lot of times it's money, right? Like if you start running Facebook ads or something and it's costing you money, and then you're like, after 4 days, you're kind of like, oh, Tyler, I've spent $400 and I've only gotten one lead. It's like, should I shut it off? Like that's the question that you would get at that point, right?
Yeah.
And it's training the money mentality. Yeah.
100%. And then you have to go into the fact that you're going after 10K, 20K clients. And if you're not willing to put in at least like $1,000 into the ad space to get a few calls coming in and to get your funnel cracked and to get those leads flowing through, then your perspective is way out of whack. Because if it only took a few $100s to land a $20,000 client right out the gate, everybody would have no problems ever getting a client. It would be the easiest thing in the world, and everyone would be millionaires, right? So it's just understanding that there's a lot more that goes into the digital marketing sphere, whether you're an agency or any other business, than just flipping the switch on, And that piece we just spoke about goes right into the expectations that agency owners need to have that conversation with their new clients too, because they're new clients. They a lot of them think the same thing too. Okay, great. I hired the agency, so in a few weeks we'll have leads banging down the doors, right? And if you oversold in your sales process and you didn't tame the expectations to say, okay, month one, we're testing ads, right? You're going to get some leads, which will be great, but really the leads are going to be much higher in cost in month one than they are in month three. And we'll be optimizing over those 3 months to get your lead cost down, stable, consistent, and it's not going to be a light switch where it just rains gold, right? So it's just taming expectations as a digital marketer and an agency owner with your clients and yourself. There's a lot that goes into it, but I like that tangent. That was good, Matt.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I used to play a lot of poker back in the day. I'm 40 now, so I think I had like a 7-year period in my 20s where I played a lot of poker online, and I even lived in Vegas for a little bit. And I made a YouTube video, a couple months ago about how poker taught, what poker taught me about the millionaire mindset. And it's a video you should probably send to all your clients before you start working with them, because essentially the idea is as soon as you can divorce the emotion from the money, you'll immediately start making so much more money. You have to look, because when you're playing poker, you have to 100% look at your chips as chips and always make the plus the best possible game decision at any moment. like when your turn is up in a hand. And if you start thinking like, oh, I shouldn't call this raise because that might mean that I can't make my car payment next month, then you won't make the best decision in that hand. And the same thing goes for when you're trying to build your business. If you're saying, oh, I can't run another week of ads to get clients because what if I can't pay my car payment next month? You're just going to keep losing. Like, you're going to end up being one of these people that just can't get their agency off the ground after 2 or 3 years because you can't get out of your head. Start looking at money like material objects, like it's just a story. It's just a story. And that's all well and fine for you. Now try to convince your clients of that. It's a whole other thing. But yeah, you do have to have that conversation. But honestly, it's like, are you building a business or not? If you're building a business, you need to just run the numbers. And like, what do the numbers look like? What do I want to get? Do I want to get 4-to-1 on my ad spend because that works with the cost of fulfillment? Great. Then that's what you need to do. You need to spend $1,000 to get a $4,000 client, or $4,000 to get a $12,000 client, It's just numbers. I do understand that it's hard, but it's numbers.
For sure. People, especially, it's harder for just new entrepreneurs, people that are new to the space, and they haven't spent, a few $1,000s on a funnel getting it to crack so that they could, have those leads come through. So they see, $500 spent on a funnel with only one lead, and they're like, oh my God, it doesn't work. The first thing that I hear from people when they're in that mindset is, my niche, I have a bad niche. Always. They almost always go to the niche, and it drives me crazy. And I'm like, no, your niche isn't bad because you spent a few $100s and you haven't got a lead yet. Like, this is the testing period. You're testing creative, you're testing audiences. It doesn't mean that suddenly dentists just stopped buying digital marketing, or chiropractors or e-commerce stores. They all just stopped buying it. No, that's not the thing. And I don't know why the digital marketers go straight to the niche, but that's the first place that they go. Well, what niche is better? It's not about that. Like, every niche, you're going to have to go through different testing periods, and you're going to have to optimize your lead channels. One thing that I find is a little bit easier than, just forcing them down the paid ads channel and helping agency owners get there is if they're already, pre-stressing about finances, it's like, okay, that's fine. Understand that. Let's go with something that's not going to stress you out every day you spend more money in ads. There are so many other ways to get leads for an agency outside of paid ads and funnels. And that's why in our program, we work with them on LinkedIn, which is just software, just automation software, which is just like once a month, you pay a small software fee, a lot less than Facebook ads, right? There's VA cold callers, which are way less than Facebook ads as well. And you have a person on a VA calling all day for you. So there's plenty of lower cost routes to get leads that are going to stress, a financially strapped person out a lot less. And I think it's just kind of understanding. And the same thing goes if you're an agency and you're bringing on clients and they're stressed out about finances, maybe you don't go with your most expensive lead gen route with them first. Maybe you take them down a path that's going to stress them out a little bit less. So it's also a little bit of balance of knowing, like, all right, this is where their mindset is. A, let's work on their mindset, but B, let's not make it a lot worse.
The best thing that you can possibly do is be self-aware. So if you're not meditating, I highly recommend that you start meditating, because if you can start to see the stories that you're telling yourself, you'll start to see where the bullshit is. And that's very, very important. Because we as humans, our evolution, we used to forage and hunt, and we had to we have things in our physiology that are meant to get us to tense up and run really freaking fast when a lion attacks us, because this is our evolution. So now when we see any sort of stressor, our adrenal glands and everything goes nuts, and we start to tense up and we start to go into survival mode. And that's what's happening to us when we're new entrepreneurs and we're starting to run paid ads and all these types of things, and we start worrying about our survivability. Can I pay my bills? Can I pay my rent and run this business at the same time, and all these things? And then they all start. But in general, if that's constantly the story you're telling yourself, you're just not self-aware enough. You need to be able to see these thoughts for what they are. Oh, that's my brain trying to go into survival mode. But we know that survival mode doesn't make any money, So understand, let's put that aside and let's focus on the numbers, right? I think there's nothing more important than being self-aware about that stuff.
I couldn't agree more. And also just where you put your energy. If you're someone who's not meditating and is worrying, and you're putting your energy constantly into, I'm losing money. This is how many days I have until I can't pay for this, or this is how many, you're constantly adding up the pennies to, stress out about the lack that you have. And you're putting all your energy into lack instead of meditating, visualizing, and putting your energy into what you are looking to achieve, your goals, the positive outcomes instead of the negative outcomes. You're going to have a completely different outcome, right? So you have to be self-aware. Like you said, you have to control your energy, and you have to be someone that is willing to do that kind of work. Because if you're not, you're probably going to struggle your entire entrepreneurial life, in my opinion. But back on branding and personal branding, Matt, how does one find, I guess, what you would consider the brand voice? Is it just in these systems, that naming your own systems? And what exactly would you call the brand voice? I mean, we talked a little bit earlier about, the XYZ method that you'd create, right? That's your own thing. It's unique and it's eye-catching. Somebody, would want to talk to you about that when you're using it in the offer sense. But in terms of like your overall brand voice, how do you decide, oh, I want to be the fun guy, or I want to be the, really value driven and teach people things? Like, how do you decide that, or does it happen naturally?
Yeah, I don't think I would make a decision about that. I mean, I used to teach acting, and now running a video ads agency, and I help people create video ads as well, and I help them be confident on camera. We never give the advice to be something, because you can't actually be something. Like, be happy. Like, so if you tell an actor in a scene, like, you're not getting the vibe from them, and you say, be happy. You can't be anything. Like, it's not an active state of being. You have to actually do something. So I don't think that there's any good, you should never try to be the fun guy or be fun or whatever. The one thing that I'll say is, and this is just sales, like, energy is infectious. So the more energy and confidence that you can bring to anything that you put out there into the world, including your one-on-one sales calls, the more money you're going to make, because people get roped into this infectious energy. And that's just a sales 101 type thing, right? I think in general, that creates more, that energy and enthusiasm in general can create more magnetism as well. So I think, but again, you can't just be more energetic. I think that you need to create sort of a list of things that you can get excited about, like actually excited about, and you have something to say which you feel strongly about, and say those things. That's the best thing that you can possibly do. Just make sure that, I mean, I wouldn't even bother with trying to make it like super SEO optimized or anything. Just find things that you're really excited about and talk about them. I think that everybody here has friends, right? Like, I probably have the least, because I'm a 40-year-old dad living in Allentown, Pennsylvania. I have internet friends. But I think that everybody has friends, so there are people that like them, We try to get convinced that there's some people, like, we get imposter syndrome, because it's like, why does everybody gravitate to this person? Like, why are they obsessed with them? Why aren't they obsessed with me? I guess I'm not magnetic enough naturally. I don't have it there. But you all have friends, right? Like, everybody has people that like them. Meaning, if you just talk about what you can get excited about and your own unique way of doing things, the people that are going to be your best possible clients will be magnetized to you, because you're awesome, right? You're cool. You're great. You have your own thing about you. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're not as energetic as I am, or you're like, oh, I can't like talk like Matt forever about whatever, it doesn't matter, because people are going to be drawn to you. Like, even if you're quieter or whatever it might be, people can see passion and enthusiasm behind in the smallest voices at the lowest volume, if you're passionate. So that's my best sort of advice, which is sort of a cop-out answer. But honestly, if you try to just be something, or I'm going to be this, I'm going to be that, unless you're like an actor, and some of these people that are making a lot of money like are essentially actors. Like if you meet them, they're completely different people than they are in their YouTube channel or something. But why do that? That
sounds
just
like
makes
twice the amount of work.
It is. It's twice the amount of work, and you may never be able to do it. And also, like, who cares? Like, stop comparing yourself to other people. Like, that's just the best way to make yourself broke. Just do your own thing.
I think the lesson there is really go the easy route and be yourself. You're good enough to get to build your own personal brand, and find some confidence before you go out and force yourself through it. Because if you're really shaky and not confident, then it's probably going to be a lot worse of an experience. But yeah, being a different character in your personal brand sounds honestly exhausting. I could definitely do that.
The best way to practice it is getting on more sales calls and being confident about what you do in those sales calls. Because essentially, when you're out there with your personal brand, you're just on a bunch of big group sales calls, right? You're just trying to sell yourself. You're trying to sell products and services. Whether there's different avenues through value, whatever it is, webinars, organic YouTube videos where you teach somebody something. It's all just one big sales mechanism. Otherwise, why do it? So unless you're a journalist, and you're not. You guys are building agencies. Like, you're doing this so that you can generate phone calls to make money, right? So, yeah, I don't remember where I was going with that, but
love it. Matt, you mentioned earlier about speaking gigs and podcast appearances, which I think could definitely elevate a personal brand. How does one go about getting more of those?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the best possible thing that you can do to get more speaking engagements is making connections with people that are speaking and obviously the direct decision makers of those things. I mean, that's how I've done it. But when I first started getting a lot of speaking gigs, I mean, one thing that I did was I wrote a book, and that book was purely there. I mean, I think it's a good book. I think it has a lot of value. I think it's awesome. It teaches you how to make video. It's great. There's a lot of experience there. But the main reason I wrote the book is to be seen as an expert in the space, and it's a piece of leverage for that.
So having that published work enabled you to get more speaking gigs.
It did. But I think the biggest thing that you can do is get in front of people and then be awesome when you're in front of them. So I think that what I did when I started getting, I think what started the ball rolling for me to get a lot of speaking gigs was my own personal podcast, which I'm about to relaunch. It hasn't been around for a year, but my own personal podcast, I would interview people that were sort of above me in status as far as speaking stuff went. And they would love being on my show, and then they would invite me to their show, and then the decision makers would start listening to their shows, and they'd be like, "Hey, who's this Matt guy? We got to get him on our thing." And the podcast stuff started to accelerate into the speaking gigs. But you could do the same thing with YouTube channels. You could probably do the same thing with guest blogging, although that's obviously harder because it's harder to build affinity people through the written word, but you can do it. So the biggest thing is making connections, and the best way to make connections easily is to have some sort of content channel to invite them to, because people love feeling important, So if you invite people, I mean, that's our core desire in life. If you haven't read How to Win Friends and Influence People, go read it now and don't do anything else. It'll make you so much money. People want to feel important. So if you invite them to your show, whatever it is, you're making them feel important, like they're an expert. And if you can make a good case with them, they'll come on, and you build rapport with them, and hopefully you can find a way to continue to work with each other, and you can follow up with them. That's a good that's the strategy that I use. It worked pretty well for me. And then I had the collateral of the book and other things to be like, oh yeah, this guy is an expert, and all this other types of stuff.
Love it. All right, Matt, I have one last question for you that I ask everyone that comes on my show.
Oh, good.
So
is it a fun one? I like the fun ones.
it is a more fun one. What is the number one, and you can only give one, piece of advice you would give to someone that is just starting their marketing agency?
Okay, I'm going between two things.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure. I would say I'm on the fence about this, but I'm going to say if you're just starting your marketing agency, you should be spending a minimum of 35 clocked hours per week on activities that you know are directed at generating sales calls. There's nothing more that you should be doing. You do not exist without clients. So if you're just starting your marketing agency, every 98% of your time, maybe 100, should be on generating sales calls. That's what I would do.
And what was the other thing?
I can only give one. What are you doing? The other thing
I
was wondering if mindset should be first. I was wondering if the first thing that you should do should be to find some way to just knock your brain into a way to think about money as numbers and start thinking abundantly. Like spend time doing abundance meditations. So if we had to mix them, we would say, okay, spend 30, let's see, 15, let's see, 2, 4, 6, 8, so 20, that would be 100 minutes a week. Yeah. Meditate 20 minutes every morning with meditations on abundance. My favorite app is Meditation Studio. I don't remember. I think Muse bought them, but you can download it on your phone. It's awesome, great guided meditations. Do that for 20 minutes every morning and then spend the next 8 hours generating sales calls. Wow, that would be a great way. That would be awesome. That's what everybody should be doing because it sets you up for success because you're going to go in there and be like, money grows on trees. So let's go get it. That's the best way to do it. Yeah.
I love it. Matt Johnston, thank you so much for being on this episode. I think
it was fun, Tyler.
Even though we
had,
buddy. Of course, even though we had lots of tangents, I think there was lots of value in those tangents. So,
well, I mean, I've run an agency for many years, so I guess I have a lot to share through those things as well. It was fun to talk about.
Thank you again, Matt.